Our subconscious beliefs about money and wealth are shaped by various factors like upbringing, experiences, societal influences. And these beliefs to this day are influencing your financial decisions, including how you handle debt. And we're going to get into a discussion about this during this interview today. And if you find yourself wanting to avoid this episode, wanting to listen to it later, wanting to go skip and find a different episode to listen to, that's a clear, extra clear indicator that you absolutely need to be listening, because avoidance is one of the key signs that you are in scarcity, that you have subconscious beliefs around money that are blocking fresh cash from coming in and that are also keeping you in debt. So here are some other things I want you to just keep in mind when you're listening to the episode. Fear and scarcity. If you grew up in an environment where money was scarce, you might develop a fear of not having enough. This fear can lead to impulsive borrowing, accumulating bad debt in an attempt to fill this perceived void. Because feelings aren't facts, but if we believe those feelings to be true, we are going to act on those things, myself included. Self-worth and success. For some, self-worth is tied to financial success. So people with low self-esteem, whether it's realized or unrealized, might resort to debt to maintain a facade of success, buying the sports car, buying the clothes, the bag, and the things in order to, so to speak, keep up with the Joneses. Delayed gratification. Those who believe in delayed gratification might take calculated good debt, like investing in education, knowing it will yield future benefits. But on the contrary, those who seek immediate rewards, they want that instant gratification. They want it now. They want the dopamine. They want the shortcut. They want the get rich quick. You will end up accumulating bad debt through impulsive spending. Belief in opportunities. Positive beliefs about opportunities and abundance can lead to strategic borrowing for investments, which is good debt. Someone who believes in their ability to create wealth may take calculated risks, leveraging debt for entrepreneurial ventures. These are the people who end up taking out loans or using PayPal credit or borrowing from a family member in order to work with me. I used credit cards, for example, because no one was going to give me a loan when I started my first business 16 years ago, because that was not a thing. It was not, you were considered kind of whack to be an entrepreneur, especially as a female back then. And that was strategic on my part. It wasn't from my ass that I did it. I was investing in my future. And obviously we see how that's paid off. Financial education. Lack of financial education can create subconscious patterns of mismanagement. And this is how I lost almost everything I had when I was 30. So I had $1 million in the bank by the time I was 30. And within 3 months of having that, almost all of it was gone. And it was because of my lack of financial education. And I felt insecure. I would say things like, I don't understand numbers. All this stuff is so complicated. Accounting's complicated. Balance sheets are complicated. The stock market's complicated. And you may not understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. And then this can lead to indiscriminate borrowing. So you can have all sorts of things come up here with lack of financial education or believing you're bad with money, or you keep saying those things. You'll end up being bad with money if you keep saying you're bad with money. So there's ways we can flip that. I'm excited for you to listen to this interview. I don't bring people on unless they've got the receipts and I can vouch for them. I'm sure I've missed a few people along the way with all these episodes, but we do an amazing vetting process. And Tawnya Schultz, she's been in my famous ProjectME Posse business coaching membership. She has gone from being in extreme debt to now being cash flush to the tune of $250,000. She is popping over on TikTok at Tawnya Schultz. Everything is inside the show notes. Be open and willing to listen to this, because we take an approach that's palatable to debt, because I know it can be a really scary topic to people. It's easy to want to avoid it and find something else to do that's really not that important. But if you are one of those people who absolutely wants to change your money story for good, for the greater good of yourself, the greater good of your family, the greater good of all, and not take 5 steps forward and 10 steps back all the time, this is the episode to listen to. If you're tired of hearing the same old basic mindset and motivational fluff talk, you've come to the right show. Welcome to Project Me with Tiffany Carter, the podcast, where we dish on everything from managing that crazy brain of yours to manifesting abundance to my straightforward, actionable steps that will make you major money online. Now, I'm not your typical multimillionaire entrepreneur. It takes a small village to keep my anxiety and depression in check. I'm inherently disorganized with an intense obsession with office supplies. Your girl here is a digital marketing content expert who's generated over $200 million in sales. I promise by tuning in twice a week, you will get a much needed refreshing dose of truth, clarity, and cash making advice. Now let's get to it. What up, my people, my posse, my fellow crazies? It's your host, Tiffany Carter, and this is the show that is going to help you grow your business, your bank account, that big, beautiful brain of yours, your mindset, your relationships, everything in between. And it's been a hot minute since I've done any guest production. And I am very particular about who I have on the show. I don't give a shit if someone's a celebrity. I don't care if they're famous. I don't care how many followers they have. What I care is that their story, their knowledge, their skill set adds value to your life immediately, because we don't have time to waste. Most of us have already wasted a shit ton of time, and I highly value your time. And I also don't want to have anyone on who's basic, who I don't enjoy. So there we have it. I have brought on for you, and you may have seen her on TikTok. It's Tawnya Schultz, at Tawnya Schultz. She's a money life coach. She was in my ProjectME Posse business coaching membership and a longtime listener of the show since 2020. And I'm making a point of saying that not for self-promotion, but for the fact that you don't know what could happen in life. All right. Like, I'm sure the last thing she thought, but maybe she put it out there and was manifesting it, that she would be on my show and I would be interviewing her about a topic that is pretty adjacent to what I talk about, except she specializes in the area of debt and the way she looks at debt. So before you get a rash and you're like, I don't want to listen, it's debt, then I have to like face all that stuff. Listen, this shit goes deep here. All right. And this is going to have you look at money in a different way. And we're peeling back the curtain and calling bullshit on some things. And it'll be refreshing and validating for you. I have zero doubt about that. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited, and I'm fangirling, obviously, because I have been following you for a while. And yeah, I just love what you teach and love how you teach it. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. And I do appreciate you're wearing purple, even though I'm not. I'm not on brand, but you are.
I want to be on brand, and also with my mug.
Wake up, stack money, slay. Is that one of yours?
No, I just bought these, but
oh my God, I love it. You need to be selling stuff like that. Passive income.
Definitely.
I love that. That's hysterical. Yes. And if you guys want to see my guests and see the behind the scenes and the shenanigans, you definitely want to watch the show on ProjectME TV over on YouTube. And you can be typing in the comments as the show goes, which is going to help you cement in that information much faster, especially for those of you who get easily distracted like myself. But we try to keep you engaged as possible. First, let's make sure the people know my favorite question is, why the fuck should we take any advice from you? I know some of your background, and it's not like you've always been amazing at money. It's not like you were like the CFO of a Fortune 500 company and you've always had your shit together. You were actually a hot money mess. Fair enough?
Yeah, 100%.
So it wasn't like that long ago. So tell us where you were at.
Yeah. So, I mean, I tell people, the women and the majority of people I teach, I've been in your shoes and I know how it feels to feel stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed with money. And I lived that life and that reality for the majority of my life up until about 7 years ago, when I ended up moving in with my boyfriend because I thought I would save money. And I thought this was a great idea. He invited me to move in, and I immediately felt trapped living with him and relying on him financially.
Wait, hold up. That was literally your reason for moving in with him. You're like, this is I'll save money. There, red flag, everybody.
On top of many red flags, I should have and I was in that state. I was in that fear around money where I was going to move into my own place, but I could save money. He invited me to start, but I didn't know him very long. And I decided to move in, and it immediately was like, what the fuck am I doing now? I don't have any savings. I have debt. I'm 33 years old. It kind of like all was like a really low point for me where it came to the surface. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? I'm doing something wrong, and I want to get my financial shit figured out. So,
did you have like a career? What were you doing for work? Or did you have like 5 jobs going? What was that makeup at the time?
Well, yeah, you don't know this, but I was a journalism major. So I was on the journalism
side. My God. I thought she was going to say, honest to God, I'm like, she's a sex worker. Because I attract a lot of sex workers. No shame in that game, but like, oh, I don't think you knew. Like, I was like porn star. I thought that was a good lead up though. Okay, go ahead.
A lot more money in that case. I could have been, but no, I was a journalist. My background was in journalism. I was in the action sports industry for a long time. So as a journalist, writing and traveling about snowboarding, which was my biggest passion and still a passion of mine. So I was in that industry, and I was trying to transition out just because I was making about $30,000 a year. I was still working at a restaurant part-time. And I was actually kind of stuck working at a restaurant because I was making good money, and I didn't want to transition to a full-time job because I was like, well, I'm going to go to making less money. So I was kind of in a conundrum, and I just started trying to make money in marketing and doing some copywriting and content. I was trying to use my skills I had to get other part-time jobs and other contracts, which is what I did when I moved in with him in the Bay Area. So that was also kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to get my big girl career off the ground. And
that's what you were telling yourself, like the fantasy thinking. I'm moving in with him. I'm going to save money, and I'm going to get my like career together. Like, I'm not going to be a waitress anymore. Like, I'm going to have like a big girl job.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Can you guys hear this? This is the national alert that we're all supposed to get today. Can you hear that?
Well, what was it?
I can't stop it. Yeah. It's like someone did warn me it was coming through. And of course I didn't remember. Anyway, well, that was the universe also making a point. For those of you who are in denial and in fantasy thinking about a relationship, or it was a version, it sounds like what you were doing. And I'm not throwing shade because I know you've been through it. And believe me, do not hire me for relationship coaching. Okay. Like, this is not a good area in my life. Is that I will start Monday. I will start my diet. I'll make sure I get my finances in order. You were kind of doing a version of that, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I had this idea in my head that this was going to solve my problems, or this was going to be the way I could solve my problems. And it only made them come to the surface more. And I was into personal development and personal growth already. So I had already I started to listen to podcasts, read books and things about finances and money, and trying to understand money mindset more and what was wrong with my mindset. You know what I mean? What's keeping me blocked from making the money I want to make, paying off debt, figuring out my finances. And I'm seeing all these other people doing it. How are they doing it? Basically,
what was your self-assessment? Because most of us, when we're unhappy with something, especially like in the money area, we're like, what's wrong with me? Why am I doing this? So what was your initial self-assessment? What did you think the problem was?
My assessment was I've been avoiding doing a lot of things that the people are saying that they're doing, like having a plan for my money and budgeting every month, working with somebody or a coach or somebody to help me hold myself accountable, and just learning as much as I could and trying to gain the skills, because it's like most people don't grow up learning how to manage their money, learning about money in general. So I was like trying to put this pressure on myself to have already known these things. I was feeling this guilt and shame around, well, I should already know this by now. And so I was like, let me just reverse that and be like, okay, I'm going to just immerse myself and learn as much as I can. Nobody taught me this, and try to just move forward from here. So, obviously you can go on a lot of different paths, but for me, I was just like, I'd figured out a lot of other things in my life. So I was like, I know I could figure this out if I spend enough time and energy and action on this area of my life.
Yet you kept avoiding it. Mm-hmm. Like you said, like you avoided hiring the coach. You avoided like taking like true action. Why do you feel you were avoiding it? Did it just feel like it was going to be so much work?
No, I mean, I think it was just like, oh, I think I could do this myself, or why I should be able to figure this out on my own.
Almost like shaming yourself into like, this can't be that hard and I need to figure it out on my own. I feel it is a form of punishment when we do that. I'm not saying there aren't some things that we can figure out on our own. Like I had to Google how to boil an egg the other day, right? Like I don't cook. And so, right. Like, so there's some things we can figure out on our own, but like in certain areas of our life, mental health, financial health, physical health, business stuff, figuring it out on your own is, I've never seen it end well for anyone. Have you?
No. No, because without the support, and that's when I started getting into more therapy, consistent therapy, into group coaching, like group networks of people around all kinds of different topics in my life. But I was like trying to understand and work on my past and where these beliefs came from around not thinking I'm deserving of having the money that I wanted or the life that I wanted, or not feeling the worthiness around my self-worth, which you talk about a lot too, is like self-worth and how that impacts your net worth and your income. So that was a big deal for me.
So when you put the pieces together, because I can tell you definitely are like an over-analyzing, overthinking personality, as is almost everyone who's attracted to me and listening to the show. When you started making those connections, the deeper connections to money, whether it was in my posse, listening to podcasts with therapy, all the combination of all the things, where do you believe this came from? Where it was a deservingness, a worthiness of being wealthy?
Where do I think I wanted that? Like, or
no, where did it come from? It came from somewhere in childhood, a significant relationship. Where do you think that happened?
There was one main thing. There's a couple things that happened in my childhood, but one reflection that I had, I was actually doing a breathwork session. I'd never really done breathwork before. And I did a breathwork session, and I had this very vivid memory of being a dancer. I was a dancer as a kid. I was in ballet, tap, all.
God, we have a lot of similarities.
I know.
Journalism. I was like, I did all the dance stuff. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Interesting. So I remember I had this vision of me we were trying out for who was going where in the placement of the setup, front row, back row, whatever it was. And then I remember two of the moms, I could hear them talking about why I shouldn't be in the front row. And then them vividly like being loud about it and saying, she doesn't deserve to be front and center. She shouldn't be. Why is she up there and my daughter's not? And
terrible.
Whoa. Like I hadn't thought about that in 20 something years. And then all of a sudden it's like, I was hiding. I'd started to wanting to share what I was learning about personal finance, but I was still kind of like toe dipping, as you say, like very just kind of like, sharing here and there, not really sharing.
Like owning it.
Yeah. Yeah. Being like, no, I went through this and I want to share this with the world, instead of being like, and it came from one of those beliefs of me thinking, I don't deserve to be front and center. Who would listen to me? Why should I be there? Why should I stand up front and center and try to things like that?
And then if we connect the dotted line of how that ties to you ending up in all this debt, it's like if we believe we aren't supposed to show up as our best selves, front and center, here I am, then you don't show up that way in any area of your life, whether it's working for someone else or yourself, which in turn impacts how much money you make, right?
Yep.
Wow,
So
that's
I saw
deep.
it show up like so many different layers. I was like, whoa, that impacted here, that impacted, like so many different things of hiding who I was or who I wanted to be.
I have a question for you, and I don't want to lose it. I tend to lose thoughts from having complex PTSD, so I don't want to lose this thought. And I'm getting a divine download, so I have to share it with you. You hearing that as a kid, oh, it makes me want to cry because that's so horrible. The shame that had to go through your body. And I bet you there's a recreation of that shame when you're in debt because debt is so much shame for people. Do you feel that you could see if we really peel it back that you being in debt, even though that was subconscious how you got there, that was a recreation of the shame of that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's linked. And I think we get in those patterns of living in those same patterns over and over again because that's what we're used to. And that's what we think that
it's a familiar feeling, even though it's terrible.
Yeah, that familiarity and that, like, living paycheck to paycheck, that was normal to me. I could always figure it out. I always figured out my bills got paid somehow, even though it stressed me the fuck out every single week, every single month. I always ended up figuring out, but yeah, I definitely feel like we stay in those cycles. And you'll see this a lot with people paying off debt, going back into it, paying off debt, going back into it, because they don't work on their beliefs and their mindset enough to believe that they are capable of staying out and building wealth for themselves or having that life that they want to live.
Let's pick that apart. Because you told me before we came on that there's a percentage, I feel like you said, like how many people are living still paycheck to paycheck, and like the debt is out of control, like worldwide, but especially, of course, in the US because we have credit cards. A lot of countries, that's not a vibe to have credit cards, by the way, for those of you guys who don't know. We have a lot of international listeners. So even though some of you wish you had credit cards, it's actually probably a good thing that you don't, unless you're a mileage whore like me and you pay off your card every month. Let's get into that about this debt thing. How does this happen? Because you said a lot of your clients are even like making $100,000, $125,000 a year, but they're in debt. And I've coached people who are making $1 million a year in their business, and there's nothing to show for it. And they'll say that. That's why they come to me. I'm sure you have people coming to you like, I don't understand. I'm working so hard. I've escalated in my career, but like I can't even go get the house I want, or I can't even like take this trip, or I can't even send my kids to private school. But like on paper, I should be able to. How does this happen? Is it just careless spending? I can't imagine it's that simple.
I think there's a lot of our society, like how we're trained in society to, we want something, we can buy it, and we have it now. Like this, we don't delay gratification for anything anymore. We can buy what we want when we want it. So there's that, which is like, oh, well, I have a credit card, I can just put it on the credit card, or it's the comparison side of it as well. Like seeing other people having something and wanting that too. So there's that, and then it just can spiral out of control. It can happen so quickly. And people think that they need a brand new car when if they bought a 5-year-old car, that's just as safe in most cases. But we make these reasoning for wanting to have living above our means or living more. Lifestyle creep happens no matter how much money you make, right?
Is it the lie that, okay, if I got this, or I get this done to my face, or I get a boob job, or I get this car, or I get this bag, or whatever it is, that'll help me feel more put together and get my shit together. It's like all this dance. So what kind of lies were you telling yourself when you already knew you were paycheck to paycheck? You already knew you had credit card debt sitting there.
Yeah.
What kinds of things did you tell yourself to justify unnecessary purchases that only put you further in debt?
I think the biggest thing for me in my 20s and early 30s was my friend circle of that, their influence. Like I felt like I was going to miss out on something if I didn't say yes to a trip, going on a trip with them, or I had problems with my car a lot in my 20s. So I was like, oh, I need a brand new car because that's going to solve my problems with having all these car issues because I have this older car. So I made these like things up in my head on like why I had to go on these trips or I was going to miss out on these things if I didn't do it now. And not being intentional with the money I had coming in and just kind of making it up as I go and not having any really clear short or long-term goals financially and just being like, I'll figure it out later. I still have time. I still have time.
Yeah, because you're like, there's any lot, we can justify anything. Like, right? It's like, there's addictions, you justify anything that you justified moving in with the guy, right? Like I do it too, just in different areas of my life. But then something happens and with you have a significant following on TikTok. I know you've worked with tons and tons of people. What are you seeing in truly a wonderful, genuine case study that you have in front of you of why people who are in debt, they hate it. It feels terrible. It's so much fucking shame that they want out of it, yet they only just keep creating more of it.
Yeah. I feel like most people are overwhelmed and don't know where to start. Like they were never taught with it. So they feel like they don't know what to do. And then the other part is some people just want it to be done for them. They want it to just magically go away. They're looking for somebody to save them. In my case, that's what I did with moving in with that guy was I thought this was going to help me out financially and save
I mean,
me.
that's more fantasy thinking. It sounds much easier, right? It's like where I keep joking on the show. I'm joking, not joking about Ozempic, right? Like they're like the magical thing. I'm going to have a doctor on talking about this. It's not magical. There's a big fucking catch to it, right? It's like there's a big catch to thinking this way, but temporarily it gives you a pass. It probably even gave you a sense of dopamine and everything will be okay by saying, oh, I'm sure when I get married or when my grandparent dies. Some of this stuff doesn't sound very flattering or cute, but we have to fucking talk about it, what people think. Like I have a client who came to me and she's now in her early 50s. She spent most of her life and she was very humbled and embarrassed to share it because she knew it sounded horrible, waiting for her grandfather to die, feeling like all of her debt will be paid off. She had back taxes. And guess what the universe did for her? Do you think Grandpops had any cash when he died? No, everyone thought Grandpops had a lot of money. No, Grandpops was spending all of his money on exterior stuff, had like double remortgages on his house. He had nothing after all the creditors were paid.
Wow.
And she kept going with the fantasy. And now what is she left with? The reality of, oh, it's me. So I want to hear what you have to say when you came out of denial of those things, where you stepped into taking accountability. What did that sound like? What did that look like for you? Because it's a profound moment in someone's life.
Yeah. For me, I was just so sick and tired. I had to get to the point where I'm so sick and tired of working so hard and feeling like I have nothing to show for it. And I had to get real with looking in the mirror, like looking at what am I doing to perpetuate this cycle? And what am I doing to not take ownership of what I've done to get in this situation and taking ownership and how do I take action to now move forward instead of making excuses for it? So it was really just like, I need to take ownership of this. And I can't change my past as much as I can beat myself up about all this shit that I did wrong, but I can take action and move forward. Cause it's like, a lot of people that I coach too, they're stuck in like all the mistakes that they made. It's like, that's not helping you.
It actually is worse.
Yeah.
Because then if we look at everything I teach with law of attraction manifestation, your vibe and your energy is stuck in this low vibrating shame. I'm a piece of shit. I'm terrible. So then you crave more dopamine hits. Therefore, you're going to make more wild purchases to make yourself feel better.
Yeah, no, it's just like eating. I say it's financial habits are so related to health related habits and how we sabotage ourselves. We say we want something. I use credit cards a lot because I was addicted to using credit cards. And it's if you tell yourself you're going to eat healthy, but then you have a pack of cookies in your drawer. Oh, just one cookie. It's just like I had my credit card just sitting there. I can just still get it out. So how are we removing those temptations from our life and just making it a little bit easier for ourselves instead of harder? What are we setting ourselves up for?
I love this because we're every day straight up either setting ourselves up for success or setting ourselves up to go back into shit behaviors, myself included. And some days I fail at this, and that's okay because a majority of the days I don't. Let's share some of those actions that you took. I mean, you just shared one of them, right? Like you made it harder for you to act out with your credit card addiction. What are some other simple actions that you took? Because like you said, people who are in this debt, and I have some people close to me who I'm going to make listen to this fucking episode. Love you. You know who you are. It is the go-to emotion is overwhelm analysis paralysis. It's like, it's too big of a problem. I'm never going to get out of it. I don't even know where to begin. It seems like too much. And then they do nothing and nothing changes.
You said in a recent episode, it's like that elephant analogy, right? Like eating the elephant one bite at a time. Like, how do you chunk something down? And I think the two biggest things I see are people not setting clear enough goals. So I had to get really clear. What are my goals, financial goals this month? Can I pay off X amount? If I want to pay off $30,000 of debt in the next year, what does that break down to month over month? What's my income now? And where's that money? I really had to like chunk down each thing and see it on paper, because it's like people say, oh, I want to pay off debt. I want to save money. They aren't specific. They aren't clear enough. They have too many competing goals at once.
I'm cringing. You know what this is like? If this is like doing a fucking food journal, food diary, when like a nutritionist makes you do it, which I refuse to do. I feel like 98% of the people listening totally believe you on that. And that sounds terrifying. How did you get yourself to put that on paper? Because when we write stuff out, whether it's for our inner child healing, money healing, when we put shit on paper, the reality is there. That's why most people avoid it.
Yeah.
How did you get yourself to do that?
I had to get clear on the reason why I wanted to get out of my financials, the situation I got myself in, which was I didn't ever want to be reliant on somebody else for money ever again. That was so like in my bones. I didn't want to get in a situation, in a relationship, in anything where I felt I couldn't leave because of my finances, or I was staying there because, and dude, if that
you are speaking from being a longtime listener of the show, being in the posse, there is no fucking better feeling. And I'm sure you can echo this right now than knowing I can leave at any fucking time. I can have someone as a client. I don't have to have someone as a client. I can launch a program. I cannot. I can luxuriate. I can work. And when people know, and I don't mean it in a threatening way, but in romantic relationships and even in business relationships, when people know you don't need to be there, you want to be there, you attract totally different people and the dynamic shifts.
It's insane. Like I can't even, night and day from the situations and the things I said yes and no to from, and I think not having a strong enough reason why. When I work with clients initially, it's like, what is your big why? What is your vision? And why? Budgeting isn't fun for anybody. Neither is working out, but we work out because of the result of what working out gives us. The after effect, or what do you call it again? The after.
Yeah, the after effect. Exactly.
Yeah, like the result. So I say the result of, no one likes to have a budget, but I knew that, okay, it's the one thing that I'm avoiding. Why am I avoiding it? Maybe I should try it and see if it's actually going to help me. And I was avoiding it. And once I started doing it, I was like, oh, actually, I feel a sense of more control around my money. Like I actually started to feel the opposite of what I'd been avoiding all along, which was like, I didn't want to look at my money. And I was like, now, and I said, I chunked stuff down. So I was very big. I'm going to give budgeting 3 months And if it sucks, if it's not working, I'm going to try something else. But like, I can do this for 3 months and see if this is going to work for me. I'm not like, this is the rest of my life. I got to do this. I'm stuck. You know what I mean? It was like,
you got out of the black and white thinking, which is a form of a trauma response that people get into of, okay, I'm not going to ever be able to go out to dinner with my friends. I'm not going to be able to take any trips. I can't go take my Pilates class. Like they go into this black and white. I do it in other areas of my life and I have to catch myself. And then it makes you, of course, not want to start when you attach a belief that it's going to be so sacrificing.
Yeah.
So what is your take on spending money? And I don't mean just on your rent, like on your necessities. What is your take on spending money when you're someone who's in debt?
I think you can't fully restrict your life, just like you can't fully restrict everything when you're going on a diet, or it's not going to be sustainable. So you need to put something into your budget. And this is where most people go wrong too. They say they're spending $1,000 a month on food. They try to cut it. They're like, we're going to cut it back to $250 a month. Is that realistic? Like you've been spending, like, let's cut it down a little bit. But so people try to go like scale way back and just cut everything. Well, let's be more realistic with your numbers and put entertainment and some of those things. Like, what do you really value? Do you like getting your nails done? Do you want to get a massage every month? Like, let's figure out a way to put those things into your budget while still hitting your debt payoff goals and your savings goals. So it's getting really clear on what you value, what you want to spend your money on, instead of just mindlessly being like, oh, this thing's cute on Instagram, I'm going to buy. Just seeing something and like I'm saying, that delayed gratification.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things to learn and the hardest things to do around money. But like, I like to play games with myself. So I'd play like the 48-hour rule. So I would be like, okay, if I see something I want, I'm going to wait 48 hours and see if I still want this thing. And normally I wouldn't, because when money is emotional. So we're either in a good mood, really happy when we're buying something that we didn't plan for, or we're sad, we're lonely, we're bored.
Absolutely. That goes with any of these things. When it comes to the debt stuff, my take is, yes, you have to focus on subtraction of things. But let's also talk about one of the fucking fastest ways to get out of debt is to make more money.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And my guess is part of how you got out of debt so quickly wasn't just the mindful practices around it. I know that was important, but it was also you stepping in to the spotlight and owning it and making more money and bringing in more cash.
Yeah, it was that hustle. I was like, can I work multiple jobs for a year to get out of debt? And what do I need to do to increase my income? I had avoided, I've always been a freelancer and wanted to be like an entrepreneur and stuff like that, and was doing that off and on. So I knew I didn't want to be in an office, but I'm like, do I need to take an office job temporarily to get to where I want to go long term? And so I had to make some short-term decisions to do things that I didn't want to do in order to get to my long-term results. I took a full-time job. I was working for GoPro. I was working for pretty cool tech companies in the Bay. So I was getting like a lot of good experience. And that actually enabled me, like when everything went remote, I could work for whatever company I want now and work remotely if I want to. Yeah, it was increasing my income, because it's normally an income issue with your spending, or it's an overspending issue, right? So a lot of people do need to figure out, how can I up my skills and make?
Yeah, if you want the lifestyle that you want and not be in debt for it, bottom line is you've got to make more money. Yeah. Period. And if I hear one more person in the comments on TikTok, and I'm putting you guys on notice, when I tell you to do the homework in the comments on there, so we do homework in real time on there. It's at ProjectME with Tiffany on TikTok, and you have to follow Tawnya at Tawnya Schultz. It's TAWNYA SCHULTZ. I'll also put her in the show notes and in the description on YouTube, so you can access that, because you need to be taking in information from people who are giving you realistic and doable advice, but who also like get it, and you don't feel more shame.
Yeah.
Right. Some of these like bro, and I don't mean bro, just guys. So like some of these people who talk about money stuff, they're like, oh, go get investment properties and rent them out. It's like, honey, someone who has no savings account, this ain't happening. This is not realistic, right? Like that shit really irritates me. But I get the comment all the time of win the lotto, win the lotto. All that is you're looking for something to rescue you and make it all go away. It's fantasy thinking. Period. It's not helping you. If you win the lotto or you end up marrying a wealthy person or you end up with a windfall inheritance, let that be like the bonus, the delightful bonus of life. But that cannot be your getting out of debt and wealth plan.
Yeah. And the victim mindset, victim of like blaming it on the price of groceries, blaming it on the cost of living, blaming it on things that did you consider moving somewhere else? That's like people don't want to consider other things. They want their lifestyle and they get so stuck with like, I'm not going to get a room. I don't want a roommate. It doesn't have to be forever. Can you get a roommate temporarily to pay off debt fast? What are your options here? Because yeah, I want to live in a mansion on the lake and do all these things, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. So what do I got to do today to take steps to get there? Do I need a roommate for 6 months to save somewhere? People just get so, I have a couple clients that live in big cities that just are way overspending and don't want to lower that because they think that they just like, they want
and that's right. And that's fine. But then you have to bring in more money.
Yeah.
But people don't like that answer either. And then now you're in purgatory and now you're fucked and now you're not going to go anywhere. Yeah. And I want you hearing this to know, like, we got to shoot it straight with ourselves. And hopefully this episode is waking you up. You don't need to shame yourself, but just go, okay, I'm taking responsibility. I'm going to have to do some things that might feel uncomfortable, tedious, annoying, not ideal. Like you said, temporarily for the big result. How do you think I have two businesses? One's an 8-figure business, one's a multiple 7-figure business. Mm-hmm. And listen, I'm not available for doing most things hard, but there's tedious stuff that I have to do. There's upfront hours. They talk about like passive income, which I could go on a whole tangent about this. I just want passive income. You know how you get passive income? You've got to do the upfront work for it to be passive. You know, like I think, don't you have like a self-paced course right now?
Yeah, I have an online course and a program. There's some live element to it, but yeah, the whole passive income thing, it takes a lot.
You had to do those, but you had to put that together. You had to refine your intellectual property. You had to package it. And yes, you only have to package it once. So that's great. But you have to put in the effort of talking about it, offering it to people, sharing it, right?
Yeah. And then the marketing of it consistently, like doing launches if I want to, or just how I'm selling it. Yeah, there's a lot more. Even like Tim Ferriss, who does the 4-hour work week, says like, I still work X amount of hours a week because you're always, if you really want to help more people, for me and you, it's luckily we have jobs that we love what we do because we're able to help more people and share what we've been through to help empower people. But it's like, you got to make work fun, but there are always going to be those tedious, like little things that we don't like to do, but that we have to do no matter what it is in life. So it's like choosing your hard, right? Like choosing what you want your hard to be.
And the payoff. I go back to the after effect, go back to the payoff. If you want the payoff, this is what has to be done. I promise you, if there was a simpler way, if there was some hack, we would both be sharing it with you right now. And this is why people fall for those get rich quick schemes. They fall for this kind of fantasy marketing. And you have to own that part of yourself too. I've fallen for stuff like that too. More so like in the weight loss world. Yeah. But you fall for that because you're looking for some quick fix. And you know what? A quick fix yields sometimes even worse results. Sometimes you end up in a worse spot and in more debt. I want to make sure, because it'd be a disservice if we didn't talk about this. It can seem, I don't know the right word to use here because I don't use many big words. It can seem strange. I don't know. We can think of a better word. That here you are, someone who teaches people how to get out of debt realistically without like sacrificing their happiness. Yet people have to pay. and not like $10. Like people have to pay like a respectable amount of money to learn from you. Explain this to the people, because someone could say, well, God, I'm going to put myself into more debt by paying for this. But not all debt is created equal, is it?
No. And I think that's the decision people have to make. And knowing if they want to make an investment in themselves, it's just like most people pay for education. We don't know what they're going to get out of paying tens of thousands.
Well, they sell you that you're going to get the job, the white picket fence situation.
Yeah. So for me, it's about getting a system and a process in place. Like I've always paid for anything that can help me accelerate or fast track something. Because if you try to do a lot of things on your own, it's going to take you a lot longer. You're saving time and money, essentially, in the long run. So yeah, you might pay $500, $1,000 to get this content and get this program and system, but it's going to actually save you years. It could save you tens of thousands of dollars. But I know that from coaching so many people now for years, like how much their return on investment actually is if they invest in something like this and believe in themselves and believe in trying something different, because what they've been doing hasn't been working for them.
Isn't it wild though, how quickly, and I do a lot of parodies of this, especially my like Instagram reels, where people have the lash extensions, they have the new iPhone, which apparently someone told me is $2,000. Yeah. I saw another person with and I was looking into them too. They're the new noise canceling Apple headphones with tax, by the way. They're $600 fucking dollars. Can I afford them? Yes. Do I think that's egregious? Yes. Am I buying them? No. And my point in saying that is they will go buy that stuff without any thought but then when it comes to even joining my like Posse membership for $100 a month, or working with me at a high level privately, or doing your group coaching program, they'll go, oh, should I do this? Oh, that's more than I want to spend. Oh, what am I going to get out of it? And they really go into the weeds with it. What is going on there? I find that wild, because my thinking is, which is probably why I'm a multimillionaire, I am consciously seeking and looking for mentors, for coaches, for experts that can either save me time, bring me more joy, and make me more money. And I am happily willing to give you my money, and even a lot of it.
Yeah. People are afraid of making the wrong decision. They're afraid
but they're okay with making that with a $2,000 unnecessary phone.
That's what I mean. That's a comparison thing though. That's I want this new shiny. It's the shiny object syndrome that happens in coaching and things like that too. It's like we see something and we think we need it. And I think it's like that belief in themselves. A lot of people don't want to be called out on their bullshit. They are afraid of, what am I actually going to have to do? And it could be that self-worth and worthiness thing that's deep down that they're not really understanding or exploring yet. But I feel like it's like, oh, she's going to tell me something I don't want to do or don't want to hear, or I'm going to fail at this. So, and for me, I just, for a long time, I had a hard time. I think this is from my trauma and my past and childhood too, but I couldn't make a decision. I was super indecisive.
Yeah, that's a trauma response too. And the saying, I'm confused, I'm stuck. Yeah. I don't even know where to begin. It's like, I picture a brain kind of short circuiting, like the spinning wheel on like your laptop, where it's like data overload and I don't know what to do. But the problem is people stay in that spot and we got to get them out of it. How did you and how do you get yourself out of that spinning spot?
I feel like even taking little tiny actions. Is it going on a walk? Is it reading a book? Is it listening? Like for me, I was looking for proof. Like I had to look at proof and see that what I wanted was possible in other people consistently over and over and over and over and over again until it got ingrained in me. If these people are fucking figuring this out, if they had way more debt than me and they can become debt free and live this life, then so can I. And it was that like repetition of seeing the results of other people and knowing like, why am I limiting myself? Or I don't know. I feel like there has to be some sort of growth mindset that shifts for people in order to believe that they like can get more out of life or deserve more out of life. And I always knew that deep down, like deep down inside of me, I knew like, this isn't the life, like this life sucks that I'm living and I want a better life. And I need to do anything, something today, going on a 30-minute walk, even when I don't feel like going, moving my body, whatever it is, like chunking it down to very small little actions, that something small that we could do. Because when we tell ourselves we don't want to exercise, but even if we go on a 10-minute walk, we know we're going to feel better.
70% of the things I do daily, I have zero desire to don't want to do it at all. And it's not because I have this stack of undesirable things. I'm inherently a rather lazy person. I didn't want to make an egg sandwich for myself. Like even that feels like a lot of work to me, right? Yeah. But like what would have been easier would be for me to have just kept drinking coffee through my various podcast interviews today. But would that have been taking good care of myself? So I think that's another thing you guys can ask yourself. What would be taking good care of myself? Is it to lean in and listen to and watch the videos of the two T's, as I'm now calling us, like listening to us? Is it joining my posse and then also joining your group coaching? So now you're learning how to bring in a lot of money, but also how to manage the debt and the mentality that remove that debt mentality from yourself. I have a different take on credit cards than you, but I can also sound tone deaf to people when I say this, which I'm very aware of because it's like easy for you to say. I used to make $17,000 a year. Journalists do not make much money. You know this, right? Okay. So I made crap money, but because of how I was raised, and so even though I had a really fucked up childhood, I do give credit to this. It was instilled in me conservatively. You do not buy anything you can't afford unless it's a life or death type situation. Yeah. And it was like almost like the fear was instilled in me, and that you pay your credit cards off each month or don't put it on a card. Yeah. And so I never got into the hole with it, even though my income was so low. And I did turn down like a lot of girls' trips. I used credit cards to start my first business. If it wasn't for credit cards, I wouldn't have been able to start it because they didn't give business loans to people doing entrepreneurship in that way back then. You were considered like a crazy person. So do you feel credit cards are an absolute no-no?
It just depends on knowing yourself. I think it's knowing yourself is the biggest thing when it comes to money. So for me personally, I was the person who was taught we don't have enough money for that, or like you can't afford that. And so what happened when I got a credit card, even though we were told in the 90s, we need a credit card for emergencies, or early 2000s, like you get a credit card for emergencies. Well, then you start realizing, well, I'm just going to put this one thing. It became a slippery slope for me. It became a scarcity mindset for me because I was like, I want to hold the money that I have in my account and then I'll just pay that back later. But then it just ends up stacking up so quickly. So it can easily spiral out of control. But when you're building a business, I do have a business credit card and I have one personal credit card for like bigger trips or bigger things that I'm putting it on. But even now I've scared myself into, I don't use that card every day because I just know it's a very fine line for me of being like,
you're not saying absolutely don't use cards. It's like you have to be honest with yourself, and maybe you have the business credit card, but you don't have it in your wallet, for example. So you're not saying don't leverage debt, because that's a whole vibe in of itself. I'm constantly leveraging debt to make a lot of money.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's definitely business situations. Like there's a lot of online things you can do to build your business for free or free marketing, but there are some investments you need to make in yourself and in your business to sometimes accelerate your growth. But it's just weighing those options or what your outcome is going to be by doing that.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it. Yeah, I don't want you guys walking away from this going, well, I can't do anything then. And now I'm frozen, because now you're going to go back to that stuck place. try your best not to go into all or nothing thinking with what we shared with you today. There's a customization that has to go on based on how you operate. What are your triggers? What are your habits? What are your behaviors? And it's the combination of like managing and lowering that debt and bringing in more cash. I mean, period, right? It's calories in, calories out with a diet.
Yeah.
The issue isn't the simplicity of it. The issue is in the discipline of it and working on the mindset stuff with it, right?
Yeah, those two things for sure. The discipline and the consistency in anything is going to get you the result you want eventually. Yeah, having those goals. And I think those two things, understanding your past with money is such a important thing that you talk about too, because so many people don't consider how our past impacts our decisions today and is affecting our lives today. So really, that's something that I focus on too, is like, where did these beliefs come from? And are those beliefs still serving you? Or are those even things that you believe? Do you really believe I'm always going to have debt? I'm always going to have a student loan payment. I don't make enough money. We tell ourselves
is that serving you to continue saying that narrative? No. And if it's not, then we have to replace the narrative.
And is that a fact? It's not.
Yeah. I said it earlier on the show. Hey, you don't want to come to me for relationship coaching. I'm terrible at relationships. I should probably change the narrative, not about coming to me for relationship coaching. That's never going to be a thing, but I need to change that narrative in that area of my life. We all do it. So yeah. I just did it right on the show. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, that's not really a great narrative for relationships.
Yeah. You're like, don't come to me.
Universe, let's scratch that. And I'm going to circle back to you on it. Well, it was lovely having you on. Thank you for sharing your story, because that's very vulnerable to share a story like that. Because like you said, like money is emotion, money is energy, but it's so important for people to hear. There's so many people struggling with this, even the people that watch online, the people who seem like they have it all together. And I love that you're using what you struggled with to serve now millions of people. What a beautiful act of abundance, and getting highly paid for it. This is what we do when we pay things forward. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.